and I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted to have Commonwealth Scholars in Southampton. It's fantastic. As we heard in the introduction, we've actually been very successful over the past decade in securing the Commonwealth scholarships, and I'm particularly thrilled in my faculty of social, human and mathematical sciences that we actually have the distance learning scholarships in gerontology and in global ageing. And every year the scholars, although they're distance learning, so they're based primarily in sub-Saharan Africa and also in the Indian subcontinent, they come together for a week's residential course in Southampton, normally in March time.
That's right.
And it really brings the faculty alive. So it's great to have you here in person now in the autumn, in August as well. I'm a bit discombobulated because I'm Dean of the largest faculty in Southampton, and some of you might know it's A-level results day. So I have actually just come from the clearing hotline room, and so do forgive me if I'm a bit confused, but as Maria said, in my spare time I do still try, even though I'm a dean, to do research, and I'm the director of the Economic and Social Research Council Centre for Population Change, and I'm also delighted to say that I'm a research associate in the Centre for Research on Ageing, which Maria is the director of as well. Because of course population change, an important part of population change is population ageing. And so today's topic, we were given the challenge of talking about making impact from our research and how working with partners can help us do that. So I just thought I'm going to give you some case studies from my own experience, and then maybe we can have a conversation about how this might be relevant for you in your own research and how you might go about making partnerships. Oh, okay. So as Maria said, I'm going to give you 3 exemplars based on my own experience over the last 5 years. One is working on population change in the UK with the Office of National Statistics. Another is understanding population change in the wider context of Europe, and there we've been working in partnership with a think tank called Population Europe, and then also drawing on a long-standing collaboration. Actually, I first started working with colleagues at the Africa Population and Health Research Centre in Nairobi back in 2004. So this is a relationship that's been going on for over a decade, and how we've been making a change and getting our research onto the platform. I'm delighted to say that actually there was a resolution adopted at the most recent Africa Union meeting on the social protection platform, where the research that we've been doing in partnership was actually recognised in a declaration of the African Union just in May, I think, this year. So, but first I thought take a step back and think about, what do you mean by impact? What is impact? And of course we're all completely obsessed with impact now in the UK context, because we have the REF coming over the hill, and we had impact taken into account at the last Research Excellence Framework in 2014, but impact case studies there only counted for a small fraction. In the next REF, still haven't told us the rules yet. We still don't quite know, but the rumour has it that impact is going to be worth a much higher percentage of the overall score. So we are obsessed with impact. And Research Councils UK, we still have Research Councils UK just for a few more months before it turns into UKRI, defines research impact as the demonstrable contribution that excellent research makes to society and the economy. And of course, impact can be of 2 forms: academic impact and economic and societal impact. And I think as academics, we're much more comfortable with understanding academic impact. We all aim in our research to make academic impact. We want to move the frontiers of our discipline forward. We want to make a contribution to advancing scientific method, theory and application. And of course the REF puts an enormous emphasis on this by grading all of our publications. and making a 4-star publication or a 3-star publication or a 2-star publication. I'm not going to really talk so much about academic impact tonight because you as PhD scholars, you're probably also completely obsessed, and you should be, because you want your research to make an academic impact and you want to be pushing the boundaries of your own discipline. But actually, most of us are being paid by somebody to do the things that we're doing. You're in receipt of a Commonwealth scholarship. I'm being paid by the university, which ultimately means I'm probably being paid by the UK taxpayer. So I need to be making an impact, which is not just about the science, but it's also about that science then having an impact on society. And that's where the second type of impact comes in. Economic and societal impact, the demonstrable contribution that excellent research makes to society and the economy, and its benefits to individuals, organisations, or nations. That's a fairly broad definition, and I hope that everything we're doing, be it from engineering through to medicine, through to social sciences, is making an impact to society. And of course, impact can take many forms, and I think this is very helpful when you're thinking about impact, to then think about the type that it can be. And again, this comes from RC UK. The impact can be instrumental, which is influencing development of policy or practice or service provision, shaping legislation, changing behaviour. Or it can be a bit more abstract. And I think for many of the arts and humanities, this was a bit of a relief that we can actually be making conceptual impact, which is more to the understanding of the issues, reframing the debate. So we might not actually be able to link our research to a change in the law, but it might be influencing the debates around that, which then may have an impact. And it can also be making impact through capacity building, through improving the technical and personal skills of the workforce and of society. And there's lots of stuff out there. I would encourage you to go and have a look at the relevant research council for your discipline. So for me, it's the Economic and Social Research Council, and there's a fantastic impact toolkit on the ESRC website, which takes you through all the different forms of impact. And if you're applying for a grant, it takes you through how you would write the pathways to impact statement that you need to write if you're making a grant application. And I know that the MRC, BBSRC, EPSA, they all have sections on their websites around impact and toolkits. So I would encourage you to have a look, because it is helpful to at least use the language that the referees are going to be looking for in your grant applications. Okay, so understanding population change in the UK. Well, when we actually wrote our grant application, the first thing we did was we got in touch with the Office of National Statistics, which fortunately for Southampton is just down the road, about 10 miles away in Titchfield, and we spoke to them about what are the pressing issues that you're really interested in. And then we actually wrote that into our grant application. We're luckily enough to be funded. And actually we're now in partnership with the Office for National Statistics and the National Records for Scotland, which is the same administration for statistics, but for Scotland. So ONS is for the whole of the UK, and then the Scottish administration have their own statistical office as well. And our aim is to improve the understanding of the key drivers and implications of population change. We have 5 research themes looking at the drivers of population. So fertility and family change, increasing longevity, which is really about changing mortality, changing life course, understanding what drives migration, and then starting to think, well, it's not just enough to be able to measure things. Demographers are very good at measuring things. We like to count how many people have been born or died or moved, but actually we then need to start thinking about the implications of that. So we have a strand looking at intergenerational relations and exchange, and we also have in the centre some really techie people doing some really complicated modelling that I don't understand, but actually is really, really important for when we're thinking about the future. And what we've done in terms of the partnership is each of those strands, we've connected them in to the groups at the Office of National Statistics who are dealing with this data on a daily basis, and we have 3 monthly meetings. And what that allows us to do is to make sure that our research is being heard by the people that need to hear about it, but also we get to hear about what they're concerned about. So it's very important two-way exchange. And as I say, there's various ways to work with the partners. One is sharing knowledge and keeping each other up to date. And when we write something, we very often send it to them and they give us comments, and equally they now give us things that they're writing so we can comment on that. And they can also be enormously helpful in disseminating results. So for example, we've just done some work on migration, and we were able to have a joint meeting with the Office of National Statistics in Westminster. They can invite all sorts of people to meetings that wouldn't come if I wrote to them and asked them to come, but they'll come if there's a more official invitation. So they can help us get our results listened to by policymakers. And then interestingly, over time, if you develop this partnership, you will start to get other things flowing from it. So we're starting to have research commissioned as a result of the partnerships. And there's a project up there, Migration and Global Environmental Change. This is from our modelling team. And that was actually commissioned as part of the Foresight project, looking at the impact of climate change on the UK population. And we've also been commissioned by the Local Government Association to look at what are the local government implications of population ageing. And then something which is actually embargoed until next week, this has been coming out on the 24th of August, is the survey of graduating international students. And that is an example of work not commissioned, but actually done in full partnership with ONS. So we actually designed the survey and carried out the fieldwork with them, but they're going to be publishing the results under their banner. So it is actually going to be official government results. And we also did it with Universities UK. And so watch out in the media next Thursday. I hope that we'll be getting some headlines with that. It's quite exciting research, but I can't tell you anything about it. So that's one example. We were also asked, have you got any examples of public engagement? And gosh, yes, we do. This is something that Centre for Population Change kind of got tempted into a couple of years ago, where I was at a meeting in Berlin, in the Max Planck headquarters in Berlin, and science is really good at putting things together and taking them on the road and taking things out to the general public. But social science isn't really very good at it. So, and we thought, can we take social science research out to the general public? And we put together a grant application, and we actually got some funding from ESRC and also from the European Commission. So this is a kind of double example. And we put together an exhibition called How to Get to 100 and Enjoy It. And you can see these stands here. There were 10 stands which actually depict different phases of the life course. And then there was a computer, an iPad, at each stand, which took the members of the public through some kind of facts around fertility or around sex education. So what are the things that govern how many children you might have, and how would you choose to control your fertility if you wanted to or not. And it took you through the whole of the life course, and we had quizzes and we had games. And then we took this out on the road, and we went to 6 different venues. We started in the shopping centre in West Quay. I don't know if you've been down to our shopping centre yet. Yeah. we had this exhibition in the shopping centre. It went surprisingly well, but then half of the university came down to support us, and that was okay because we were at home. But then we went off on tour, and I think the most amazing part of my whole academic life, I would say, was being in this shopping centre in Glasgow, which was called Silverburn Shopping Centre. I had no idea that this shopping centre was in the bit of Glasgow with the lowest life expectancy in Britain. It's in the kind of ward where the life expectancy is the lowest in Britain, and I've got an exhibition on how to live to 100. But it was really interesting because you meant you got to engage with people and talk about healthy lifestyles. What do you mean? What do we do? How do we improve our health and our life expectancy? So it was fantastic. And this is just some pictures of the exhibition. What happened after we had done all of this is the BBC then decided to have a whole week around living to 100. And then we took the exhibition to the BBC, and that is me being interviewed on breakfast TV. So what started as an exhibition in West Quay Shopping Centre grew, and suddenly we're in everybody's living rooms while they're eating their cornflakes. Now you might think, oh, I can't do that, that's a little bit too ambitious. But you actually can. You just have to believe that you can do it. Because we didn't think anyone would be interested in boring old facts around demographic change, but actually they were. We're currently on the road at the moment talking about migration, because there's a huge amount of issues in the press around migration and lots of misinformation around migration and what does it actually mean. So we're participating in the Southampton University Roadshow and talking about migration, and this is just two of our team at Country File Live last weekend. Challenges. The biggest challenge is actually evaluating the impact, because you go out and talk to people, but so what? How do I know that it's made a difference? And of course, the simplest thing is just to count how many people you've engaged with. So you can count how many people have come up and interacted with your iPads or you've spoken to. But that doesn't really tell you anything about how it's influenced their thinking. And actually, if you're interested in evaluating how your research has had an impact on the public, you need to think about how you're going to measure a change in something. Are you going to measure a change in their knowledge about some facts? That's fairly easy to do, because you can ask people, what did you know about X, and then did you know about Y, before or after questions. Much harder is to then get at changes in attitudes or changes in behaviours. And then you start to think, oh my God, that's what my whole PhD is on. I can't do a piece of research just to evaluate my public engagement. But you do have to think about it up front and almost treat it like a research project yourself, and think about how you're going to collect the information that will capture the impact. So I'm not going to go into huge detail about how we've done our evaluations, but just think about evaluation at the outset. And of course, you can't actually stop someone in the street, in the shopping centre, get them to engage with your exhibition and then ask them a 20-page questionnaire. That's not going to work. So you've got to really hone in on the key things you want to know. Okay, I'm going on a bit long, so I'm going to shoot through Population Europe. I've already alluded to Population Europe. This is a group that's a kind of think tank. And actually, if you want to make impact, as academics, we're not necessarily trained to make impact. So go and find someone who's a professional in it. Go and find someone who is trained in it. And we were very lucky. As I said, I was at this meeting in Berlin. And Population Europe has funding from the Max Planck Institute to promote knowledge around population. And they have a website, and you can see that they have various things that they use, like info letters, policy briefs, pop digests, etc., videos, blogs, all sorts of ways in which they try to interact with the population. And we interacted with them and actually wrote them into a grant that we put together, where there was emergency funding by the ESRC for understanding the implications of Brexit. And we put in a small grant application for emergency funding just before the referendum to think about what would be the implications of Brexit for migration. And migration dominated the discussion, dominated the debate. There's claims here, unless we back a hard Brexit, the UK population is going to rocket by 12 million, which is equivalent of 12 new Birminghams, etc. Lots of misinformation in the media. So we did some research. It's my little piece of research, which I actually did with Maria, about just looking at the data. Who are the EU migrants living in Britain? What are their characteristics? How old are they? How educated are they? What are their family circumstances? It's very simple. It's just some crosstabs. Put it together, and then we organised an event in Westminster. So in the morning we presented our work to policymakers, academics and journalists, and then in the afternoon we had a public debate. And what Population Europe did was then take all that material and turned it into this policy briefing that they then disseminated for us across Brussels. And they also put together the package of videos and blogs for us, because we don't have that kind of resource as a small group of academics in a university, but other people do. If you can engage them, they'll do the work for you. And it's more headlines. Okay, and there's links to the blogs and the videos. They also, Population Europe opened doors and allowed us to reach new audiences. And after the exhibition had been all around the UK, they then decided we should take the exhibition to Brussels. So this is me in Brussels at the European Parliament, and the exhibition ended up in the lobby of the European Parliament for a week. So you really can aim high. Third piece, I'll be 5 minutes on this last one. I was told I could have half an hour. Almost on track. Is understanding population change in a global context. And here, the Centre for Research on Ageing, which Maria directs, as I say, has had a long-standing partnership with the Africa Population Health Research Centre. And we're currently working on a project with the Kenyan Ministry of Labour and Social Protection and Help Age International. I would say that this partnership with APHRC is broader than just on ageing, and we've got long-standing collaborations with colleagues in the demography department looking at maternal child health and adolescent health, teenage health, etc. And things that are much more common to be the development agencies to be thinking about in the development discourse in the population space. Older people are just invisible on the development, in the development discourse in most of sub-Saharan Africa. You know, if you're going to put money somewhere, you're going to put it into children. You're not going to put it into thinking about older people. So we teamed up with APHRC and Help Age International and the Kenyan Ministry, and have been doing a number of different research projects with them. But just to put it into perspective, there are more older people aged 60 and over who live in the developing world than live in the developed world. There's more people in the global south than there are in the global north, and this figure is expected to double. So there's going to be 2 billion older people by 2050 living in the global south, and many of those countries lack comprehensive systems of social protection in old age. And I think an even more worrying statistic is by 2050 there's going to be nearly 500 million who are going to be aged over 80. And it's maybe a 60-year-old can still be fit and healthy and maybe able to engage in livelihood strategies. But 80-year-olds are less able to do that. That's really, you know, if you're 80 and over, you're much less likely to be able to be physically fit and engaging in your own livelihood strategies. And of these 80-year-olds, 21 million will be in the least developed countries. And you'll all be familiar that those are the poorest nations in the world. So it's really important for us to be doing research in this area. So currently we have a project on the impact of social pensions on multiple dimensions of poverty, subjective well-being and solidarity across generations. Gosh, that sounds like a really big mouthful. But the Kenyan Ministry of Social Protection has introduced an older person's cash transfer program in Kenya, where everyone over 60 is entitled to a minimum benefit. And so first of all, we wanted to look at whether everyone's getting that. So how well is the targeting? The people who are entitled getting it, or are the people who are not entitled getting it, and the people who are entitled not getting it? So errors of targeting. But also, we're interested in how that pension then changes the dynamics within the family. And there's lots of evidence from South Africa that that benefit, once it's starting to be received, was actually benefiting more than just the older person. Was being spent on schooling and benefiting the grandchildren, so there was lots of externalities. So it's a really good vehicle for governments to use to improve well-being, not just of the older person, but of the wider family. So far so good, all positive things, and certainly Help Age International has been flagging up these positive things. But we're also starting to see an emerging discourse around exploitation. So some older people are being exploited by their family members. Younger family members coming and just turning up on pension day and taking the money. Reports that actually it's introducing tensions within the family. And so we wanted to really kind of unravel some of those things, both the positives and the negatives, because if you know about the negatives, then you can put things in place to then start combating those. So it's an ESRC DFID project. It's mixed methods, because to do that unravelling, you need to have qualitative research, and we're working into communities in Gerontology and Evandrou. Why is it important to be working with the government? Well, first of all, they're the key stakeholder, so it's their money, it's their benefit system, they're actually delivering it. They also are gatekeepers to the administrative data. So if we want to actually do evaluation of who's entitled, we can ground truth it back with the ministry. And at the same time, Help Age International is also an important partner because they're a key advocate of social pensions internationally. Challenges of doing this type of research with the ministry is, gosh, is the research independent? You know, will people think, well, actually it's not independent scientific research because it's actually being done with the government? You have to really think about the benefits of your partnerships and the challenges of your partnerships, and independence is absolutely central. So what we've done is we've had stakeholder meetings beforehand, worked with the ministry to co-design the research, but then during the field work and during the data analysis, it's all completely independent. And the ministry doesn't know who we're talking to. So you kind of put up a Chinese wall, because we need our research to be independent. And actually our partners are fantastic. They haven't had any, in fact they want us. They want to know if we're finding out if people who are entitled are not getting the benefit, and equally they want us to find out if people are getting the benefit who should. They don't want the names and addresses of the people, but they want to know what are the issues, so then they can put those issues right. But you could find yourself in a position where you might find yourself in a conflict of interest with partners. So it's just something to bear in mind. But the partners are involved in the design and dissemination phases, but not in the analysis. Okay, and again, we produce glossy things to then disseminate our results out to the wider community. But I've talked enough, I've taken my half an hour. But if you want to find out more about the projects, that's the the website. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Jane. So, I know you've probably got lots of questions that you're thinking about asking Jane, so right.
Hello everyone, thank you for inviting me to speak to you today. So I've chosen this title because, well, life science is what I know the best. I'm in this area of research, and also some aspects of, or some examples I'm going to talk about are of course applicable to other areas of research, but some are more specific to life science. So what is research impact? You've had some definition from Jane already, but it's mostly saying the same thing. It's real-world benefits from the research, and it can be in different areas: policy, society, teaching, business, and it can also take different forms. So as Jane mentioned it can be conceptual, changing ideas, informing thinking, challenging the debates, the wisdom, enriching the public debate. It can be instrumental, so influencing directly policy, services, and products. It can be capacity building, so during your studies you learn new skills, you have different experience, and this builds your capacity and your experience. It can be cultural, so increasing the willingness in general to engage in new collaboration, opening minds, and it can also be connectivity. Okay, so having more connection with other people, to do some research or to do other things. But the fact that you're doing your research with other people, with different collaborators, will also influence how you draw some impact from your research. So I've given examples from the Southampton University website, but I'm sure you can, these pages are available to everyone, and I'm sure you can find the similar web pages on your own university websites. So impact in research, as Jen mentioned it, we kind of oppose impact in academic areas and economic and societal area. The impact in the academic area, so impact in research, is kind of obvious. That's what you're expected to do during your research, during your master, during a PhD. That's you're doing your research, that's going to inform the research, the academic community. So in life sciences, it could be that you discover a new drug target, a new model for a disease, a new medical device, simply a new understanding of a disease, for example, and even build a new collaboration, and why not a new international collaboration. So impact in research start with dissemination of your research, of your results. Okay, so take all the opportunities that are offered to you to disseminate your research. It could be a poster at a local, a national, or international conference. It could be a seminar that you're invited to give in your center, in your research group. And then once you've gathered enough data, you'll then be able to write an article, peer review article, or review about in your research area. But what's really important, once you've done that, is to be proactive on the dissemination of these different outputs. And you can do that by having a press release, contacting the marketing and press office of the university to have a press release based on the article you're publishing. You can use LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, anything to disseminate and let the world know about the research you're doing. And I don't know if you've heard about altmetrics. Altmetrics is kind of a new measure to see how well is disseminated a piece of research, an article. And you can see now, if you look online on different papers, you can see this multicolored circle with a number in it, and that's what it means. For example, this, in this case, it's been tweeted more than 3,000 times. It's been blogged about in 24 different blogs. It's been on, I don't know how many Facebook pages. And this is all gathered together, and it shows how widely disseminated your piece of research, your article, your review is widely distributed. And you can contribute to build up this number. You can share your own work on Facebook, on Twitter, to build this number and grow the network of people that know about your research. Another thing that helps dissemination for those of you who are doing a PhD is the 3-minute thesis competition. So this is a national or even international competition, but it starts locally. It starts within the different faculty of the university. And this is being organized in Southampton, but I'm sure it's been organized in other universities in the UK. And it's, in this competition, you need to summarize your PhD thesis in 3 minutes with just one slide, and it needs to be aimed to a large public, so a lay public, not an academic audience. And this is a way for you to engage with the public, to think about your research and to put it in words that's understandable by any person that is not academic, that is not specialist in your research. So impact in teaching. So academic life, it's research, but it's also teaching. And that's something that you may want to get into either during your master or your PhD, but also when you're back in your own country, develop this teaching experience. There are opportunities during your studies to be part of some teaching teams, doing some practicals, doing some demonstration, doing some undergrad project supervision. You can also do some tutoring, and these are just 2 examples of organizations that use postgraduate students, master or PhD, to tutor secondary school or A-level students to help them with their work. So at the university, you need some training if you want to do some teaching, but that's really useful for you because it's basically teaching you the basics of teaching and how you should approach this. And these are 2, so the introduction to teaching skills for postgraduate researchers is something that the university offers here, and other universities as well, I'm sure, and that's required before you can participate into practical demonstration or project supervision. And then depending on what module or what practicals you're teaching, there might be specific training for that particular course or module. If you want to go further, there are other certificate or training that you can do, and you can even go as high as becoming Associate Fellow of the Higher Education Academy, which will give you a title that you can bring home saying, I have teaching experience and I can directly apply it to participate in teaching in your future institution. So impact in outreach. So this is a very busy slide because there are so many opportunities in the field of life science that you can participate into. So outreach, what it is, it's public engagement with research. And it's basically maximizing the flow of knowledge and learning between university and society to enrich the life of the wider public. So in Southampton, we have Life Lab. Life Lab is a lab within the hospital, within the research building of the university, where secondary school children come and experience what is it to do research, what is it to learn about science that will make an impact in your own lives. And you can, as a PhD student, you can, and master I think as well, you can participate in this session and be the scientist that these school children come and meet, and you can explain to them what is it to do research in a PhD. So the other things I've listed are different events, opportunities you can participate in to speak about science, so either to a wider public, a lay public, or to school children. The Pint of Science is a festival in May where there are different events organized by the university, and you can participate in those and share your experience of research with different people. There are science cafe. The Pride Club is a stand-up comedy show that you can participate and again speak about your research to a wider audience. And of course you can use podcasts, blogs to share, disseminate your research to a wider audience. So this is just an example of what colleagues have done in the stem cell area. They built this stem cell cascade, and it's like a flipper equipment really. You put a ball at the top, and it goes all through this metallic maze, and it ends up in somewhere around the base of the mountain. And this depends on the different levers that the children activate. And depending on where the ball ends up, it shows what this stem cell is becoming. So a stem cell can become any cell in the organism. It can become a skin cell, it can become a neurons, it can become a heart cells. And it shows that it explains the concept of the stem cell and how the stem cells can become any type of cell in the organism. So this is at present at the Winchester Science Centre, but it just came from a simple idea, trying to explain what is a stem cell to the general audience. And it's really with a small grant that my colleagues have designed this and then built it and got success with it. They generated more money to build a second one so they could they can go on tour and different festival and share this with a wider audience. So just thought I mentioned that for those at the University of Southampton, there is the call at the moment that you can apply for some funding up to £4,000 to do some research engagement activities. I'm sure there are equivalent pot of money and funding in your own universities. So impacts in industry. You might have come during your research with an idea that you think, well, this might be useful to develop into a business, into a startup, but you don't know how to do it. And there I've put here different startup competition to help you build this startup, to help you build the business case, the plan to become a startup. And these are different competitions that you can apply to. You don't need to have done anything else before you apply to this. Just have possibly an idea. Sometimes you don't even need to have an idea. You just need to have a team of 3-4 students together that are motivated. You apply, you build your ideas, you build your business case, and if you're lucky and good enough, you win and get some money to actually start up development of the products that you thought of or the service. So these are just a few examples in the life science sector. And of course, at Southampton, we have this wonderful new platform, which is Future World. And their goal is to discover innovations within the university. They have a team of mentors, business advisors that can help you to build this idea, this business plan. They have masterclass, they have Dragon's Den competition, and lots of tips if you want to develop something in this area. And so I just would like to now give you an example of a PhD student in the Faculty of Medicine who took this really to the heart and got fantastic impact from her research. She started by being a tutor, teaching assistant in different associations or structures, the Brian Club and Life Lab, for example. She then went on to participate in this 3MT competition. She won the faculty series, she won the university series, and she won the national award by just speaking about her research and putting it in simple words to a wider audience. With the award she got from this 3MT competition, I think she got something like £3,000. She created A Beat to Life, which aimed to train school children in CPR and raise awareness of the importance of emergency treatment to preserve the life, but also the brain of the people. She's a PhD student in neuroscience and hence the link with her research. Following this award, she's been invited to give a TEDx talk. She's been part of the Taylor and Francis mentoring program. And she's, even before the award, she's quite active on Twitter and LinkedIn to disseminate all that she does. And although she has done all her education in the UK, she has family origin from the Middle East. And her 3MT award was picked up and shared on Facebook by a public figure in the Middle East. And she then was interviewed in a Kuwait newspaper, as well as radio in Palestine and Jordania, I think, and got wider audience there. She's now been invited to give talks in this country, and that's her way to share and disseminate impact of her research in a PhD. So it's not easy to start doing impact when you're head in your research and you think you need to, you have deadlines, you need to do your experiments, you need to do your research. So one important thing is to grab the opportunities when they come, okay? You all receive emails asking you to come to a seminar, to participate in different show or conference. Take these opportunities to start sharing about your research. Of course, use LinkedIn, Twitter to do networking, but don't forget real life. Going to conference, going to seminar, talking to different people, that's really important. You build your network of people interested in your research and build your network. So with individuals, organizations, associations, stakeholders that are important for your research. But then don't stop there. You need to use that network. You need to, there is no point to collect 300 friends on Facebook or LinkedIn. You need to then use that in network to create opportunities and to act upon opportunities to influence and lead others. So what you can do during your stay and your studies as well is learning about existing organizations and systems to deliver impact. You've seen, for example, for the outreach, there are plenty of opportunities for you to use to deliver some impact. There is no point for you to reinvent the wheel and try to organize something from scratch. Just use the opportunities that are already there. It's also important to learn about existing collaboration partnership with UK, with your home country, so that you know the people that are already having international collaborations, and maybe you can just join them and be part of this collaboration. It's always easier to take part in something that's already existing rather than trying to build something entirely new. One way to network in your area is also to become member of the UK, but also your own country scientific society. That's where you'll meet the people in your research area that might already have ways to do impact and where you can join. And don't forget, impact starts with dissemination. So you need to publish, of course, but it can also be through posters, seminars, doing the 3M thesis. So that's where it all starts, okay? So just as a take-home message, really the first thing is to experience what UK, Southampton, or your home, your UK university has to offer. Learn as much as you can in the impact area you're interested in. No one can do teaching impact, business impact, outreach impact. You need to choose the few that interest you and in which you want to develop. Identify the existing international links that are already there. As I say, it's easier to grab and be part of a team that's already formed. And then you can create your own impact in your own country when you're back after your UK studies. And then you can use this impact to support development, to teach children in your university, to do business in your city, and to develop your research, the impact of your research that you did in your UK studies. And I'm going to stop there.
Wonderful, thank you, Sandrine. We're buzzing with your useful tips and ideas. I'm going to invite both of our speakers, who've done an excellent job this evening, to come and sit here at the front and create a panel in readiness for your scintillating, exciting questions and comments that you're going to raise. Help yourselves to some water. Wonderful. So, we have plenty of time for questions, comments, anything you want to raise. Yes?
I have a question for Professor Jimmy. You showed us some very interesting data on what the futuristic forecast for the population in this area where you're studying in Nairobi. And I find it really interesting that what do you think is giving rise to this increase in old people, given that these same people don't have affordable care, they are not living in the most rightful conditions compared to the developed world where there's everything, but they're likely to have more old people there than here.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and I think that's why older people are hidden in the development discourse, because we have this idea that they're not going to survive to old age. And it's absolutely true that a lot of people living in informal settlements may not survive to old age. What we found in the Nairobi slum area where we're working is that many of the older people who are there now moved there when they were young adults. So they migrated from the villages to Nairobi in their 20s and 30s, and then they've grown old, living in the city. Of course, many people haven't made it, but increasingly people are making it because there's been a general rise in living standards, which have filtered down, right down into the informal settlements. So, and older people have access to healthcare, have access to not necessarily, I was going to say clean water, better water than it might have been in the past. So life expectancy is rising right across the globe. I mean, it's one of the huge success stories of the 20th century.
So what do you think is the difference? Why is the South beating the North?
Well, there's more people living in the global South then. I was very careful. I didn't say proportion of the population. I was telling you the total population. So if you think we live in a world of 7.5 billion people, out of those 7.5 billion people, over 1 billion live in China, another billion live in India, You know, so just in absolute numbers, there are more older people living in the global south than the global north. As a proportion of our population, there's more older people in the north than the south, still. But that's going to change, and it's going to change quite rapidly because fertility is coming down. But you don't want a whole lecture on world population.
Thank you. Another question? Yes.
I actually wanted to ask you to, firstly, thank you for your presentation. It was quite interesting. What I'm actually concerned about was that, so we discussed a lot of dissemination examples from the developed world. So now you're working in Kenya, and I've worked, like I'm from Pakistan, and I worked there in dissemination, etc. too, especially to the policymakers and the public. So how do you think you are going to change your dissemination strategies? Because this, like, disseminating here in the developed world, it's usually different. At least in developing countries, you have lack of political will, at least in my country, or the public has more concerns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting question. Maybe Sandrine might have experience as well. I mean, certainly social media operates differently in different parts of the world. But so I think you have to understand how it's operating and then use it to the advantage. So you can't do exactly the same. So and I mean, we are partnered with a local research organisation who understands the local context, and we wouldn't be able to, I can't do it remotely from Southampton, I think, you know, so if I was doing research in Pakistan, and we actually have colleagues in the Centre for Research on Ageing currently who are working in Pakistan, they're partnering with colleagues in Pakistani universities. So that's the first thing I would say, is always make sure that you're working with someone who understands the local context. Yeah. So and think about adapting your strategies. But actually social media is a very powerful tool all over the world. You just have to use it differently in different contexts and understand who you're reaching and who you're trying to reach, and maybe organise different types of events in different contexts. I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you said. The context is very important, and also social media is worldwide. It's used differently in different countries, so you need to be aware of the cultural aspects of using this social media.
And it takes a long time. I mean, it takes a long time to build partnerships. So we, and I should say that our partner currently at the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection in Kenya is an alumni of the Commonwealth Scholarships. So they came and they did the master's program in gerontology at the University of Southampton and went back to Kenya. And so it's using those connections as well. So build your network. Yeah, I loved actually Sandrine's presentation, because that's exactly what you have to do. Is, I mean, start building your networks tonight. Connect with each other. Make sure you know each other, because you don't know when you're going to come across each other again. But I tell you what, there's something about growing old. We're all going to grow old. And all our connections are going to grow old with us too. So, you know, you're studying now. In 20 years' time, some of you might be prime ministers or Minister of Health or running a big NGO or in positions of influence and policy making. That's just what happens, you know. We become old. I didn't think I'd be dean when I was in my 20s. It just happens.
I was also going to add that, because coming back to your point about creating an impact with politicians in particular regions of the world, that is highly challenging. And I think some partnerships, non-academic partnerships, may have greater leverage with policy design or political context. So again, the types of partnerships that you create, sort of, especially if they're international as well as local partnerships to bolster each other, can help add to that leverage with the policy arena. So, yeah, good question. Yes.
Continuing with the social media, as you said, it is very, very powerful too. As with every powerful tool, so at the end of the day, it's important to deliver the proper good information.
So I guess my advice would be to, when you share something on social media, is to make sure you include the source of your reflection, so the article, so that people can trace back and go back and see the source and read for themselves. Also, you might want to share your opinion, so there is not a lot of advantage to just retweet thousands of facts, random facts. What you want to do is make an impression for yourself. So when you share something, put your own opinion on that piece of research, on that article, so that people can start noticing you in this world of social media.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you have to, Evandrou made the point right at the beginning, is that scientific research is at the core, and then you're making an impact from your research. So actually you need to publish your research first in a good peer-reviewed journal article, I hope, or something that's possible. And then you're then rewriting it in a way that's more accessible for a different audience, but always put the link back to the original research, because you're absolutely right, the world is full of misinformation, and so we have to be very clear that we are members of the scientific community, and so scholarship comes first, and then we're making an impact from our scholarship. So the impact in and of itself, if we just want to make impact, we could be writing anything. There are also avenues for opinion. So there's a very good venue called The Conversation. So that's a joint venture between, gosh, I don't know how many universities now. There's several universities from all over the world subscribe together. It's something called The Conversation. I'd have a look at that. You can write articles and opinion pieces on that, but and that will then be read by other scholars and other interested people.
There was another question behind you, yes, and then I'll come back to you, yes. Yes. No, you, yes.
Me?
Yes, you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks very much for the presentations. I've always had this challenge trying to put connection between research and then real impact on target beneficiaries. So research is done, and usually they are presented in very nice reports and stuff. The challenge usually I have, especially for a developing country perspective where I'm coming from, is that first of all, in those contexts, we have sort of agendas that are not focused towards the key issues. You are in a context where issues that drive national conversations are more political and that do not necessarily relate to the issues about bettering the quality of life. So my question really is, how then do we go around this hurdle, trying to make sure that the impacts of research actually trickle down to the beneficiaries? And then the other thing is that usually there are very good researchers with nice recommendations. The implementation usually has, from my experience, the challenge usually has to do with getting the people who are engaged in providing the necessary service in that area to be able to appreciate the recommendations of the research, and then sort of help it trickle down that recommendation to those beneficiaries. Because what happens is that sometimes you see that the recommendations of any research just hang on. It's like it's a scratch. They just scratch it on the surface, but it doesn't really get down to at the core of where the problem is. So how do we handle, go around these hurdles?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good question. I mean, first of all, we started our research with with 2 different workshops. One was a community workshop where we actually brought people in the communities where we're doing the work together to get their views on the research that we were hoping to conduct. And actually, by talking to them, some very interesting things came out of the conversations that we hadn't really thought about. And then we also had engagement workshops with policymakers. So you start to involve them in the research design at the beginning. So then there's more ownership. And then at the end, you don't just have the policy implications and put them out there. You actually try to engage the people that you're trying to influence in helping you think through what are the policy implications. So almost put the challenge back out to them and say, what do you think are the implications of our research? Oh, and kind of get more shared ownership, because if you get more shared ownership, then you're more likely to get action on that. But it's a hugely problematic, and you're probably aware there's just been elections in Kenya, so we've just done this nice piece of research. We don't know. There may be different people in the ministry next time we go back, and so that's also a challenge for academics, is that the people that you are partnering with may well change. I mean, the same is true here in the Office of National Statistics. Our liaison person constantly changes. Every 6 months we phone up and it's a different person in the office. And then you have to build that relationship again. But you just have to keep building, keep trying.
Sandrine, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. I think what you said is entirely appropriate and right. You need to involve the beneficiaries from the beginning of your research. In life sciences, if you study a disease, you might want to talk to some patients, talk to some clinicians who are treating the patients, to really know what are the issues, what are the problems that the clinicians are facing, so that your research in basic science, in biology, can address the issues encountered by the clinician, by the patients, that are relevant to them. Yes.
Hello. My question is not really a question, it's a scenario in a way that I'm seeking for, response to. And then my scenario is this. So assuming you undertake a research and your finding comes out with, let's say, a development challenge that probably your government or your political institutions or the powers that may be are the ones that have themselves created the issue. Now, if you want to go about addressing the issue, how do you go about it? For instance, in your presentation, you both make the point that the key stakeholders are governments. So, for instance, if they themselves have helped create that issue, and then by approaching them about the issue, they think, let's say, taking the issue forward may help make them unpopular. How do you circumvent and go about that issue? That's my question.
Yeah. We all have that issue. It's not just a Global South issue, it's an issue for all of us. I think then you have to think about partnering with a range of people. So when I was showing you the example of the social pensions project, we're not just partnering with the ministry, we're also partnering with HelpAge International. And within HelpAge International, we're partnering with HelpAge Kenya. So we're actually partnering with a range of partners. So that means that you're getting different audiences, and you might be able to get different groups interested who will then be able to put forward different policy options and have different channels of communication. But yeah, I mean it's a big challenge. But you know ultimately your research, if it's good scientific research, then somebody somewhere hopefully will listen and think about it.
And if I may just add to your answer, Jane, all governments throughout the world, once they've been provided with scientific, rigorous evidence that there are negative consequences to the reforms that they've implemented to their policies, and there's some evidence as to what the feedback is from the beneficiaries as to how what they would prefer in terms of service or the level or whatever it is, they want to hear that because they're spending a lot of money and they're putting their sort of profile, sort of in the public, and they want to get re-elected, and so ultimately they want to hear the scientific evidence base and engage in a discussion about how to try to turn this around. Now, I think that's hard, but I think they all want to hear the evidence, unless they totally, sort of blank it out. But yeah, creating allegiances in order to add credence to that evidence base, because it's evidence-based policy, evidence-based impact.
I think also Maria is making a point there that you have to find the right hook. So if actually what they're doing is spending money inefficiently, then you have to point to the efficiencies, and maybe it's not the equity argument, then the equity argument might flow from the efficiency argument. You find what they're interested in, and so economic productivity might then have positive externalities on well-being. You can tell I'm a social scientist from the way.
So Jean's going to come in as well.
So it's speaking their language as well. Yeah, sorry.
I think if I just may add, it might not be one piece of research that induces a change, but with this first piece of research, you get the ball rolling, and it will be read by other academics who might build on this research and get other evidence there. And once there is a mass of evidence, then maybe the government, the charities, the NGOs might be more open to discussion.
There's a question at the back. The lady at the back first. Sorry, sir. Lady at the back.
Different platform, but maybe thinking about connections and how you use the time when you're doing your PhD is to start making these connections now, which you might not use now, but in the future. And also thinking about what other opportunities there are available. So actually, we've just applied for Newton funding, and we're partnering with the University of University of Fitz, but also the Kenyatta University in Nairobi. So we're partnering with the Department of Gerontology there and the Department of Gerontology here. So start thinking, when you're starting to move towards the end of your PhD and you're applying for jobs in institutions, then start thinking about, well, how can I get my first grant application? And it may be that it's a very small application. It's just a Newton fund, which will allow you to travel and to organise a seminar. The Newton fund has mobility money, which is only 10, 15, 20,000 pounds, but that can go a long, long way. Start making the connections. Who do you want to work with? Who can you write with? Who are going to be your future collaborators? And some of those will be your fellow students, some of those will be your colleagues in your academic department, some of those people might be people you meet at conferences. So it's thinking about how you build those connections up. But I completely accept your point that we are in a privileged position and are getting a different platform to you as a PhD student at a different phase of your academic life. I totally get that point.
gentleman in front of you also wanted to ask a question, and I think there's a question at the back there, is there?
Yeah.
There's one there as well? Okay.
Thank you for the presentations and the opportunity to speak. Mine is actually not a question, but a contribution to the discussion. Taking from what Professor James said, the last time before she spoke now, she said, speak their language. So I'm thinking, is it possible to be diplomatic in a way, I mean, in a bid to seek partnership with these politicians and political class? Let me be very precise, maybe from Africa, because the truth is they don't want to be told the truth, they don't like being criticized. So I think if there is a way it can be diplomatic and gain, I don't know, if there is a way to do something like that, it might help solve this issue. Actually, I think a right-thinking politician wants popularity, and he wants to do things that will impact the grassroots and will want to be elected again. So if we can leverage on that interest, probably we can make some impact.
Thank you for that contribution. Thank you. Question at the back? Oh, sorry, there's one there in the middle and then one at the back.
I think mine is just to complement what my colleague, my friend here just said. But I also want to think that creating a research impact is not a day's business. It's a long process. And this PhD just gives us maybe the first step out of the viral road. And there are so many steps that we need to take. And I like the point that you raised about raising partnerships and really putting yourself on the map by, disseminating as much as you can using more available options that could be there. And the other thing I want to highlight is that it doesn't end there. My experience over the past 3 years is that I need to develop more understanding in the area I'm researching in. And it's not a matter of 5 years. It's a long process. I mean, it could take even 15 years. So to have an impact-oriented research study will also require thorough understanding and knowledge of the area that you're researching in, much more connectivity with the rest of the wider world that's doing research. And it's a multi-pronged approach to the whole aspect of making sure that your research is having an impact. So after the Bible, you might think that it's just going to be all like that, okay, I'm going to do these meetings, I'm going to talk to the VCT people, but it's not an end in itself. There's still more work to be done. And what's needed is to be aggressive about it, to take steps to broaden your understanding, and to link as much people as you can, so that you can at least try to create a spot in the world about it. Thank you.
Thank you for that contribution. I mean, at the end of the day, it is very challenging. It is a tall task, but in your host country, within the fields of study that your PhD is in, there are evidence gaps, and your PhD research is striving to bridge some of those evidence gaps. And that is a very important hook to start with in terms of how your research is building on the existing knowledge and providing evidence in that field of study, in that area, and then locating those relevant partnerships and building layer upon layer of partnerships and connections, and then disseminating out. So find your hooks. Yeah, find your hooks. Yes?
Thank you for the presentation. It's just a contribution I'm about to make. While it may be important to create an impact for your research, as a master's student, you barely know much about research. Maybe PhD students can make much of an impact. So it's just an advice that if there are any master's students around and you have to go back home this year, it's not the end of the world. While you're preparing to apply for maybe another scholarship to do a PhD, there's a lot of small things that you can do to make a difference. It's not going to make a big difference to your country as a whole, but it will make a big difference to people who look up to you. So I'm thinking right now, what are the challenges that I faced in deciding what to study or in deciding where in science I want to make an impact in many years to come? while it might be possible in a developed world that secondary school students are well oriented about the choices of what they want to do in the university, it's not always the case, for example, in Cameroon, where I come from. So you can take the opportunity when you go back home to go to those secondary schools, talk to the principals, talk to the students. Such opportunities don't exist and we need it. Talk to the students, tell them what is happening in the university. It's not just about coming to university because you study science, you have to do biochemistry, because that's what happens. You know you're smart, so you go for what you think is hard in uni, but that's not the way to go about it. So if you can start from the roots to advise those young people on the choices they make and the opportunities that they have for those choices later, it might just be a way for you to create an impact in whatever you're studying.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very helpful contribution. I'm now looking at the time and it's about 7:05, and I'd like to just turn to our two speakers and ask them if they have any final comments or guidance or advice to the audience.
I think what I would share with you now is that you don't need to wait until your research is done and dusted to start your impact. Your impact starts when you start your research, and even before. It's when you design your research, you'll think about your impact. And it's every small steps that you can start to disseminate and start building some impact. So don't wait until the end of your master or your PhD to start thinking about the impact. It's right now that you need to think about it and start building small steps to be able to build this impact. It's a long-term work, really.
Yeah. Thank you, and I just thank you very much for your contributions from the floor as well, because actually, particularly that last contribution just reminded us, I think we are getting dragged down a little policy avenue of impact, but of course there's lots and lots of impact that you can make. And if you reflect on why are you in this room now, many of you are in this room now because you had an inspirational teacher, an inspirational lecturer, a person who inspired you to make a difference. One of the biggest impacts you can have is going back and inspiring the next generation. Rather than changing government's minds is actually quite hard. Changing the minds of the people because many of you will get lectureships and will be in a position where you're teaching the next generation. That's the biggest impact that you can make. So thank you very much for that comment and reminding us that impact comes in all shapes and sizes, but I just want to wish you all really well in your viability.
On that note, I suppose, we thank our two speakers.